Our guest for today is Mr. Larry Brakebush, who for some years now has been heading up an organization most commonly known as People for People. It is a food bank for the San Gabriel, Rosemead, Alhambra area. But actually, Larry, the People for People Food Bank is a DBA. This originally started out, I believe, as a church council and is still chartered that way. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. We were started off as the West San Gabriel Valley Church Council in 1984. We were started by a group of lay people and some ministers that got together and decided that there had to be a better way to distribute food to those that were really in need. So they got together, they started this organization, and they used the back of a church for several months. Then they moved to a location in the city of San Gabriel, and that was in 1985, and we've been in business going ever since.
Nice. Well, let me take a step back and say welcome to Around the Valley.
Thank you very much, Son.
Yeah.
It's great to be here.
It's great to see you. Today is November 6, 2012. And let's just take a step back for people who don't know not only what is People for People, but what is a food bank?
Well, in essence, a food pantry. It's a place for people who can qualify, can come together and get food for free. We feed in the neighborhood of 300 families a month. And it's very, very interesting over the years that I have been involved to see how things have changed. We used to feed people that were homeless. That's who you think about mostly that need food. And there are still many, many homeless people. But because of the change of the economy with the difficult times and people working and the things that they're trying to get accomplished and taking care of the family, paying for gasoline, paying for rent, things like that, they don't have as much money for food. And so if they meet the minimum standards that are set by the government, because we have to follow government guidelines, then we're able to feed them. And what we're able to do is provide them with a large box of food once a month, unless you're homeless, and then you get the opportunity to come in once a week.
Got it. And what areas do you cover?
We cover the 6 different cities. We cover Alhambra, San Gabriel, Monterey Park, Rosemead, Temple City, Arcadia.
I was wondering if anyone's interested in donating food to the food bank, can they do that, or how can they get more information on that?
Yes, they can. We've just moved to a new location. As I said, we were in the same place from 1985 until June of this year, and we moved to another smaller location in the city of San Gabriel. We are at 1311 Las Tunas, which is at the rear of 1309. We have a small building there where we distribute all our food out of. And yes, people can bring food there anytime they wish during our working hours, which is normally until 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
You know, do you get most of your donations as money or as food, or is it a mix of both?
I wish it were a mix of both. Actually, most of the donations come through U.S. Postal Service. Believe it or not, the U.S. Postal Service, the letter carriers, get out and do an annual food drive every year. Normally it's the first or second Saturday in May. And we have been fortunate over the years to benefit from them in that we can get between 75 and 100 tons of food a year from the Postal Service, from the excellent work that the letter carriers do by going out and collecting food that people leave at the curb.
In addition to that, you also get surplus items from some of the local markets, like Trader Joe's, I know is a major contributor.
Trader Joe's, Starbucks, Albertsons has been very generous to us. Claro's Markets have been good. We also get Pizza Hut pizza, believe it or not. They have pizzas left over, and we're able to distribute those.
Geez, that's amazing. So where exactly are you located? I know you gave the physical address, but what is that by? I'm from San Gabriel, so as soon as I hear San Gabriel, my ears ping.
Well, the easiest way for me to tell people where we are is we're real near the Elks Club Lodge on Las Tunas. We're just up the street from the Elks Club Lodge, and we're in the rear at 1311. And as Art knows, the biggest problem that we have there is parking. It's very minimal because it's in the back.
Got it. I know exactly where that is. It's like the border of San Gabriel, Temple City, more or less, right?
Yes, just inside San Gabriel.
That's great. So tell us about the history of this organization. I know you mentioned, or Art mentioned, it began somewhat affiliated with the church, but you also seem to have a long history in San Gabriel and surrounding areas and serving surrounding areas. So how did that come to be, or what were some milestones maybe along the way?
Well, people used to shop pastors. In the old days, people would go from church to church to church to get food. And sometimes they would go to 4 or 5 churches in a day. Pastors, being very generous, would try to give money and food to people that qualified that they thought deemed necessary to receive food. So collectively, they got together and decided maybe there's a better way to provide food. Maybe if we had a central warehouse or a clearinghouse kind of a thing where we could supply food to people, we would do that. And so by getting together, forming the association that they formed, the West San Gabriel Valley Church Council, they were able to have one central place that all churches could refer people in those different cities to that were in need to receive food. We're limited by food. The contributions for food are very generous from people. People have taken the time over the years to support us, particularly at Christmas time and Thanksgiving, as we have coming up now. People will reach down and be very generous with food. The biggest problem that we've had over the years is sustaining the money. The money that it takes to operate the businesses. It's incredible. In that, just as an example, we pay over $3,500 a year in workers' comp liability insurance, and I have one full-time employee and one part-time employee. And one of the things I'm the proudest of is over the 28 plus years that we've been in business, we've had one full-time employee, which means very little of the money that comes in goes into salaries, because that means the money we can turn right back around and use it again to feed those and help support the cost of need. But the cost of doing business is expensive. And right now we are really, really struggling, which is why I'm glad to present this and talk to you guys today.
In addition to the food distribution, you've also had a very successful Adopt a Family program during the holiday season.
Yes, that's very true. That's one of the things that our director is very, very proud of, is that we can take and qualify as many as 50 families in the course of the winter months. And then at Christmas time, we get different organizations, individuals, groups, anybody that wants to gather collectively, come together and adopt a family, and then be able to supply not only food, but we ask them for a list of things they need. And it's utterly amazing to see what people want. For instance, you'll see families come in and they'll ask for books or blankets or bedding or slippers or simple things. Nothing big. I mean, it would be very unusual if you saw a list with a television, although people ask for those things. And fortunately, we've had people be able to supply them over the years. So we're looking forward to that again this year. We try to make the qualification that you not have received a gift 2 years in a row, although there certainly is a need for some of these families to receive it 2 years in a row. But we try to spread it out so that more and more people can be involved.
What is the best way to contact you guys if someone's interested in donating food or money or adopting a family?
Well, they can either stop by during business hours, which is normally about 9 to 3, Tuesday through Friday. We're closed on Mondays. Or they can call the office, which is at area code 626-285-2549.
And is there a minimum that people need to do to get involved? Like, I don't know, I just feel like right now a lot of people don't have a lot of resources, but are willing to give, but maybe they'd be embarrassed to say, I can only give this much. Is there a minimum, or do you?
No, we love the open-heartedness of people. People are willing to give, the giving nature of people. That's one of the things that I've really noticed over the years, that people are still willing to give. People that have are willing to share with others. One of the downfalls for us is because we had to change locations because of the cost of rent and the cost of doing business, we had to give up a small thrift store we had. And that really kept us tied into the community because people were able to come and to give and to donate. So the donations now are down. People are learning about our new location since we've only been there since June. But there is no minimum. I mean, a can of food, I mean, it's going to go to somebody. Somebody's going to be able to use it. So a couple of cans of food, or people want to put out a box and collect money on a counter at the store, all of that's helpful. Anything would be greatly appreciated.
Nice. Well, this is a wonderful story. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back and we'll get into a little bit more of what People for People does, and maybe a few specific examples. Thanks for joining us on Around the Valley, and we'll be right back.
I'll pick you up after school. Okay, I got it.
It's easy to take a day for granted. You and your family are connected by routine, and you stick to it. But what if a disaster strikes without warning? What if life as you know it has completely turned on its head? What if your day's routine is disrupted and you can't reach your family? Have you planned for that? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you to be ready. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed. Today. Learn how at www.ready.gov. Ready.gov. This message brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Around the Valley. I'm Lucia Flores here with Sean Tellis and Art Landing. Today is November 6th, and we are here with our special guest, Larry Brakebush from the People for People organization. And we're talking about how your organization, they do so much for the community, but in taking into consideration the current environment with the government and how a lot of budgets are getting reduced, how is People for People being affected by that?
Well, believe it or not, we're finding it very hard to continue to keep our doors open because of, again, the difficult economic times. The giving is down. We counted very heavily upon a block grant money that we received from the city of Rosemead, and their city funds were reduced significantly by Washington, D.C., and so they've reduced the grant money that they were able to provide for us for the last 5 or 6 years to the tune of about $21,000 a year. And when you have a group that's operating on a budget of close to $100,000 a year and you take 25% of it and reduce it, it's really hard to make up with other operating contributions and donations and people giving. So that's one of the reasons that I'm here today. It's actually to make our plight known to others that we do need funding. It takes between $6,000 and $7,000 a month to keep our operation going. When you figure you have to pay for rent and fuel and taxes, and you've got to pay a phone bill, and you've got to have the trash taken care of. All these things that you don't realize are part of keeping a business going. It takes money to do it. And right now, we are really struggling. And we're not alone. There are other food pantries and service groups that are going through the same thing. I mean, I understand the Salvation Army alone has had to let go 100 employees recently. These are really significant changes in our society.
I believe that several of the food banks here in the San Gabriel Valley have shuttered their doors completely. Am I right?
Yes, you are. It's sad to see, but one of the reasons, as I mentioned before, we're able to pick up as much food as we are, is that we don't just pick up food in the cities that we operate in. We're able to go into Covina and West Covina, all the way out to Claremont, to Baldwin Park, where we receive food, because the food pantries there, or they've never existed, and or they have gone out of business, or they're downsized to the point where they cannot bring enough people in to be able to pick up the food. So, for instance, Baldwin Park, where Lucia is from, where they don't have a group big enough to come in and gather the food on the Postal Service food drive day, so we're able to gather the food and then share it back with the people from Baldwin Park, give them a portion of it, because, again, people being generous, we're sharing, but Baldwin Park has become very small, so they don't have a big food pantry there.
You know, one of the things that I've always find interesting and hard to deal with is kind of like the larger problem of needs is the people who need the most help usually have the least amount of resources, the least amount of infrastructure, and, development is a huge thing. I've worked for a few nonprofits, and if you have a large development wing, you're usually doing pretty good. And the people who don't have a large development team are the ones who could use that the most. But it's development is kind of another word for fundraising, and it's such an important aspect, and it takes years to kind of cultivate sometimes relationships with large donors and all these things that kind of conflict with the day-to-day needs of getting food and giving food. And I think the fact that you've been able to battle and keep going is a testament to your organization and to your commitment. And I think, that should be recognized that a lot of people either have to close or have a lot more assistance maybe in terms of finances than you guys.
You're right. And one of the reasons that I'm here this morning for is to really promote the fact I'm looking for someone to help write grants. Grants are a way that communities, companies, businesses, government can help. People are willing to get involved, but you have to know particularly how the style of a grant is, how to write that grant, what the requests are. And it takes a person that's got some experience doing that, or it's all done by trial and error. In the past, we've tried grants. Maybe we went beyond what we should have because we were thinking big and hoping big. And we've rethought now, and we think that maybe if we could get someone to help us, to guide us, or to come in and get involved as a volunteer in the grant writing program, that there are a lot of smaller grants out there through banks, through market chains, different groups that would be willing to share their monies with us if we could do it right. So, yes.
Yeah, I think it's so right. Through my own work with nonprofits and grant writing, it's extremely competitive, and you have to use the right wordage, and you have to have someone completely dedicated just to that, because it is its own art form and its own kind of scientific speciality there. One of the things I thought of is, I know a lot of nonprofits are partnering with other nonprofits. Have you ever tried to partner with the Asian youth group that's in San Gabriel?
Well, believe it or not, our director has a meeting with the Asian, and I'm not sure what the name of the group is. I apologize for not knowing. But they're going to do a television program in which she's going to attend. She's very concerned, of course, because most of it will be done I believe in Chinese. I don't know if Mandarin or Cantonese, but we are partnering with this group. They've actually come to us and said that they'd like to help us and partner with us. So we looked at that in the future. And they have some grants, and even if they shared a small portion of one of the grants with us, it might make a difference. Those little things are very, very important.
And, of course, Sean is tipping the hand of Rosemead Kiwanis a little bit because Roy Roselle of that organization is aware of what we are talking about, but their grants were just for this year, so we couldn't do anything for next year. But that is part of what we're hoping to be able to do to help People for People. I believe you've also gotten a grant from Walmart, and you picked up another $2,000 from the city of Rosemead that somebody else wasn't able to utilize. So we're doing what we can, but Rosemead is the one city that has been doing anything in this area. The other big problem that they have had is that originally this was basically a multi-church project, and the churches were giving monies every month to help them out, but that was decades ago. A lot of these churches have been downsized because of the cultural changes. Buildings that could accommodate 600 or 700 people have less than 100 people meeting there. Those congregations cannot do. It's not that they would not. It's that they cannot do what they were able to do 30 years ago, and we have not been able to bring in the Asia Pacific community and their larger churches into this entire area of the homeless community and the needy community successfully. And that's one of the things that we're hoping to work towards by having the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast, which is coming up this Veterans Day. And now we at least have some of the churches in Rosemead working together, but we don't have similar movements in the other cities yet.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see the differences between the ways the cities in our areas are run. Arcadia, San Gabriel, Temple City, Rosemead, because they're so similar and yet they're so different. I think Rosemead and Temple City are good examples of cities that, what is it called when you kind of outsource different things like roads and police officers? You're a certain type of city. What is that called?
A contract city.
A contract city, exactly. Right. They do a good job of balancing being a contract city, but also being kind of a small town feel. I think certain cities like San Gabriel, as much as I love my home city, we have problems. We have roads that aren't paved, and we have, police officers that seem to be unhappy with the city and vice versa. And there's fire department issues. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't think it's always being a contract city, but I think you have to look at the differences and say, why is it that Rosemead not only has its roads paved, but is donating money to, food pantries while other cities aren't?
Well, I think that part of the thing that you mentioned when you are a contract city, we work into this with Chief Murakami, as he was referring to. Although we are a contract city, we're not insular. We pull in police from Temple City, East LA, whatever, when we need them in an emergency. We do it with the fire department. We're thinking in terms of the broader base. There is a San Gabriel Valley homeless council. It's based in Covina that we are a part of. It has about 400 organizations that are a part of it. Larry's going to be going to their meeting on the 14th of November up here in Pasadena. They're having a big seminar up there. We work on a regional basis even as we look at our local affairs, because as a contract city, we've got all these other contract cities.
Right.
Then you have the charter cities, such as South Pasadena, San Gabriel, places like that. And I say this is a South Pasadena resident for many years and a native. We tend to be insular. We just think about the own things that are in our own city, because San Marino next door has its own police department. LA has its police department. Pasadena, Alhambra. Little South Pasadena does things just for South Pasadena. And this is a mindset that these different types of cities get into based upon the kind of city they are. I think that might have a great deal to do with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think a lot of organizations are trying to understand how this works and how it will work in the future. For example, Mid-Valley News, our local newspaper, we covered mostly El Monte news for a number of years, 40 plus years, and just recently kind of have a more regional approach. And I think I'm running into a lot of people who run nonprofits or other groups who are doing the same thing. You know, it's not necessarily Rosemead Kiwanis and San Gabriel Rotary and these groups that just service these cities, but people are having a more broad approach, kind of like you did with your food pantry. And I wonder, how long has that been that you've serviced so many cities?
Well, we started in 1984, so we're in our 29th year.
Okay, and you just started off right from the get-go, kind of servicing a number of cities.
Yes, they picked the 6 cities at the time, and they started to do that. Well, let me go back to city government for a minute. I find that very interesting. I'm not political, but I benefit from some of the politics, and I have to give an awful lot of credit to the city of Rosemead, the leadership of the city, to the city manager, Jeff Allred, down to the city council. The city council has been very, very pro people for a number of years. And it goes back, they've had a transition in their city. They've had all the city ins and outs that you have with the discussions of various areas of the Walmart that came in and those kinds of things where city council members changed and they had re-elections. But the city council has been very, very favorable for us. For instance, we had a charity golf tournament this year in September. And the city manager played in the golf tournament. He brought one of the city staff. The mayor came. She was not able to play, but she was able to show up and show her support. When you see that from a city, it really gives you a good feeling. It makes you feel that people care. And you talk about Rosemead. I see Rosemead as an exceptional city. And again, I give credit to the leadership and the direction. And again, a lot of that comes back right to the city manager himself. So thank you, Mr. Allred.
Yeah, and just as a quick plug, the city of Rosemead Mayor Sandra Armenta, is that how you say your last name?
Yes. I
had an event in San Gabriel, and I invited a lot of local leaders, and she was one of the few that came, even though it wasn't in her city. So since then, she's been a very impressive person to me, and I see her all over the place. So she's doing a great job.
You also mentioned service clubs. Service clubs are great. The Kiwanis, you mentioned the Rotary Club. The service clubs they get involved right on the very level. You talk about the food drive that we had. You'll see the service clubs actually picking up. For instance, they do the entire city of Temple City. We don't have to put people over there because the service club, the Rotary Club, I think it's Temple City Kiwanis.
I'm pretty sure it's Kiwanis. Yeah, Temple City Kiwanis is a pretty strong group.
I think it's a Temple City Kiwanis.
Temple City Kiwanis is there, and San Gabriel Kiwanis, I believe, helped you in getting your new location with Bob Bobkin there on Las Tunas. And, of course, he's been almost president for life, it seems, of the San Gabriel Club.
Yeah, and the first time I actually heard People for People was from some San Gabriel Rotarians. So because I know there are some Rotarians who are heavily involved in People for People, right? At Miles, I think. From San Gabriel, yeah.
Yes.
San Gabriel Rotary is very strong.
Yeah. Well, let's take another break, and we'll come back, and we'll see where our conversation goes. And thanks for joining us on Around the Valley. We'll be right back.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah?
You remember that ball game we went to a couple years ago?
Sure.
And how you didn't have enough cash for 2 hot dogs, so you walked with me on your shoulders until we found an ATM? And then when we got back to our seats, we never saw the hot dog guy again.
Well, I don't remember all that.
Yeah, that was an awesome game.
You never know which moments will be the ones they'll remember forever, so take time to be a dad today. Learn more at 1-877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Getting back with Mr. Brakebush, the People for People organization, they started, I believe you said, 29 years ago. Am I correct?
Yes, you are.
Going back to when I was a little boy, and I'm going back now over 50 years ago when I say that, we had a way of dealing with homelessness because in those days, everybody knew everybody in the neighborhood. You knew who belonged to a lodge, who belonged to a business organization, who belonged to the Scouts, PTA, whatever. Everybody was involved with something. And you always had vendors and others in the neighborhood. You had the man that was selling fish from his truck, the popsicle man, the Helms Bakery man, all these people, because you had housewives that weren't working. They were buying their things from the vendors who were in the street if they didn't want to walk all the way to the market. You didn't have 2 cars in every garage then. So that was the type of atmosphere that we had. But you know how we dealt with the homeless problem in those days? We didn't have organizations like People for People. The hobos in the hobo village, which was up along the railroad track, and the kids would even go up there and associate with them. I did when I was 10 years old. They would come down and they would offer to do odd jobs, and they would even mark the curb as to the places that would be likely to give them work for food. And they'd come down, maybe 1 or 2 of them a week, and go around and do a little bit of begging, and you get your lawn mowed or your garden weeded or whatever, and they would give them some food for doing it. That community attitude doesn't exist anymore today, and in fact, we'd probably be fearful they were burglars.
You know, I think you're right. I think you're very correct, and I hate to admit this, but I happen to have those memories also, having to be close to you in age. So the community was involved. And we would not be in business for over 28 or 29 years if the community hadn't been involved now. And it's that community involvement that we're trying to appeal to. You mentioned before about how churches have changed and become smaller and difficult to operate. We figured that if a church of, say, 50 people, a quarter a week, $50 a month, if we knew that was going to come in, that would help pay a bill. And if all the churches in the community the congregation could get together and $1 a month or $2 a month, you know, we waste a quarter on something frivolous, and think about what that could do to help in getting the community back involved.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I know that's becoming more and more popular is fundraising with small donations that are repeating. You know, like you set up like a PayPal account or something online, and you ask someone, hey, can you give $1 every month? And it automatically gets charged. And, you know, I think that's a way that people have been doing things. Or kind of like crowdsourcing is the way they call it, when you go online and say, hey, can everyone give me $1? You know, and because we're going to buy a new kitchen for the school or whatever it happens to be. And I've seen a lot of people raise a lot of money that way. And maybe that's something we could talk about later on, of trying to help you fundraise. Or, you know, one of the things I enjoy is video editing and, you know, that kind of thing, because you really have nothing to lose. You just have an afternoon. If you don't get the money, you didn't have it before, right? But if you do, then you really accomplish something meaningful. Something I enjoy about helping people and encouraging people to give is that feeling you get when you've done something positive. You know, a lot of people didn't grow up experiencing that, maybe because of a lack of a community feel for a number of different reasons. But once you get that feeling of, wow, that felt really good. You know, I just gave a little bit of time or a little bit of money, and I feel really good about myself. I wasn't expecting that. It's kind of addicting, you know, and I think it's something that people need to be reintroduced to.
Well, like I told you before, we wouldn't be in existence were it not for the volunteers. You figure that if we're only dealing with one full-time employee, that we require her to know all the federal government guidelines, all the city guidelines, all the health department guidelines, all the things that are applicable to running a business, and then try to staff it by herself. It's impossible. And so it is the community, the people, the volunteers that make it possible. And that's the thing I'm the proudest of, is that people are willing to get involved and come in and give of their time. We're very fortunate to have Art's wife, Elizabeth, as one of our volunteers. So she comes in one day a week when she can. And I think that may have helped her open her eyes to what we're doing. But yeah, the feeling that you get from offering help to others, it humbles you. It truly does, because it makes you realize how fortunate we are, the gifts that we have. God has blessed us in many, many ways, and sometimes we take that for granted. But it's a spirit of people that share, and you can walk away a day knowing that you've done something for somebody else, and that is really, truly a good feeling.
Okay. Well, and now that I've been outed as being the husband of one of the volunteers, I will testify to the fact that it is a good thing to do, because many times people who've been picking up food are still waiting there with their box when I go to pick Elizabeth up, and we'll put them into our Jeep with a box in the back and take them to wherever it is they happen to be living with a relative or whatever. And you get to know the stories of these people. And these are not bums. These are not addicts. These are not people that I have yet to find a single one of them who are just being sponges because they can't do anything. These are people who worked in some cases for decades and got laid off and haven't been able to find a job in 2 years. These are people who have had various disabilities, and they get a small disability amount of a couple of $100 a month that barely pays for their rent, and that's why they're having to give or ask for food and do the things that they're doing. These are human beings that, as a Christian, we're supposed to be looking to those that are the homeless, those that need to have clothing, those that need to have food. I feel it's part of my commission as a Christian to reach out and to help these people in any way that I can. And we've got a lot of other Christians in this community that I think perhaps need to think a little bit more of how do we do this on a practical basis. Yeah, like Sean says, it may only be a couple of dollars a month, but collectively we could be doing a lot more if we can just get our mind and our focus onto it. But what are we doing? We're having to focus instead on how do we survive in this economy ourselves because of a government that's taking 40% of everybody's income in one kind of tax or another.
Well, I think something to keep in mind too is it's the focus should be on helping people, because there are people who aren't Christian who want to help people.
Absolutely.
You know, and there are people on all walks of life who want to contribute. And I think the most important thing is just being that vessel that you can people can go to or give to, because not everyone has the time to do the research of all these places and see who's stealing money and see who's helping people and to learn that, you're...
Sean, when I say it was part of my Christian thing, it doesn't mean that only the Christians do it.
Right.
The Jewish communities, the Buddhist community, others, they have been very, very helpful in a number of different endeavors, and we certainly need to give them. In fact, the Denny's restaurants that helped us out with the stand down this last weekend by contributing the eggs for the breakfast for Sunday morning happens to be owned by a family that is Muslim.
Yeah, I think that's great. And we're going to get into the stand down.
It's not the first time they've done it. They helped out with the Relay for Life. They helped out with other things.
Yeah, exactly. And
they're part of our network.
It kind of ties into a larger issue that we have in America, but more specifically in the San Gabriel Valley, of how do we see where we agree and kind of ignore where we disagree when we have to.
Well, let me assure you, we don't qualify people when they come in. We don't ask you who you are or what you believe in.
Right.
We're willing to accept help from anybody. And and again, I come back to the community. The thing I'm proudest of is the volunteers that come in. And that's what it hurts me. And the board had to make a decision this year to move to a smaller location and give up the small thrift store we had, because that helped with the interaction with the community. More people were able to volunteer. We've actually had to cut back on our volunteers because we don't have the store anymore. When you operated the store, you needed staff there and people to handle the clothing and those things. And that cuts back into what we're able to give back into the community, too. We don't have the clothes that we used to have, and we're losing some of our ties to those people. And that's a sad thing, but we had to consider that as a business decision.
Larry, some of the food banks actually have volunteers who are able to take food to households so that people don't have to travel. Do you have that type of service available in your particular food bank?
Yes, we're serving the senior citizens. I think particularly in the city of Rosemead right now, we have an outreach service where we take food right to the seniors, and that's done on a weekly basis. And so we have seniors that are shut in, not able to move around, and so we're able to take food to them. I've got to give credit to the LA Regional Food Bank too, because we are associated with the LA Regional Food Bank, although they are huge, and they receive an awful lot of food. They allow us to come down and go through the docks, and we can buy food for between 19 and 23 cents a pound, or they give us different food. The government food comes through them, the government subsidies. You may be old enough to remember one year where the government had nothing but cheese. They had blocks and blocks and blocks of cheese. All the cheese came out through the LA Regional Food Bank, and we were able to distribute cheese. Well, we do that with vegetables and cans of fruit, rice, beans, staples that people need. Because you got to remember that one of six children goes to bed hungry every night. Think about that. In this society, in this country, we're not talking about a third world country, someplace where people are struggling. We're talking about the United States.
Yeah. Well, what about the percentage of people that are on the school lunch program in Rosemead? In some of the schools, up to 80% of the kids actually qualify for discounted or free lunches because of their income level.
Yeah, and on top of that, you have obesity problems in a lot of our cities, because a lot of times the least expensive food is the least healthy, and, combine that with a number of factors. You have a lot of issues that affect us emotionally as a community, and also if you want to look at it from a financial side as well, because health problems cost a lot of money.
It's interesting you say that. As I was driving here today, I noticed that the city of El Monte has a Proposition H, which has to deal with the tax on beverages, and the amount of money that's being spent on both sides. If that money it could have been better used, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. I think the same thing. You know, when you think about, not to get too political, but when you think about our new assembly seat that's been created in this new district of Matthew Lynn and Ed Chow, I think both of them have spent over $1 million now. To think if $2 million could have gone to People for People, you know, what would that do or something? You know what I mean? I know flyers are important, but geez.
Yeah, truthfully, our ultimate goal would be to own our own building and be able to have money coming in on a regular basis. That's the optimum goal. But right now, we can't even look at that. We have to worry about paying the rent for December. We have to wonder about, are we going to have enough money for our staff?
Mm-hmm. Are you going to be having any fundraisers coming up?
Yeah, we're trying to put together a spaghetti dinner to be held at the Temple City First Baptist Church, which is at 6019 Baldwin, on Saturday, either December the 1st or December the 8th. And we're using a local restaurant. We have a local restaurateur who runs a restaurant called Alex DePepe's.
Oh, that's a really good
Alex
restaurant.
DePepe's is a very good restaurant, and it's run by Larry DePepe, who is the son of the original owner, who's since passed away. And Larry has been very, very generous with us in the past, sharing with us opportunities, putting together a program where 15% of the bill for 1 month all came to us over and above. And I'm trying to get him, he has a band, he's a very, very talented and gifted musician. And I'm trying to get him to put together his group, not only to supply the food, because he'll do that for us in a drop of a hat, but I'd like his group to play too, for an opportunity for people to come hear him and expose his musical group. So we're working towards that.
You'll have to let us know. We'll include it in the events section of our Mid-Valley News. Alex DePepe's is a great example of a community place. For if you've never been, you have to go. It's a small, tiny restaurant on, is it Las Tunas?
It's on Las Tunas.
And you couldn't believe it when you walk in there. You know, I think they have a sign if you're in a hurry, you're in the wrong place or something like that. And when I was in high school, I used to go there. And one year, one of my friends turned, I forget what it was, 17, 18. And they gave us a free cake, you know, with candles. And I've never forgotten that, you know, and my sister's going there. We all love it. I remember they used to have little TVs on each table. You put in a quarter and you could watch TV. You know, they've since been gone, but it was from a different time, and it had a lot of charm, and it still does.
Well, and again, like I say, Larry's been very, very generous to us, and so that's one of the fundraisers. Traditionally, around Christmas time, we put together a pancake breakfast. We were trying to hold it at the Rosemead Community Center, and then some of the different churches, either in Temple City or Rosemead. But over the past number of years, the cost of putting the breakfast together the return was not good for the cost.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's like we were talking about before, fundraising is an art, and it's, what I've come to learn is that the organizations, the Red Cross, the giant ones that we all know, they spend a lot of money to make money, and that's good for them. They can do that. But we don't necessarily have those resources in a very hyper-local situation, and it puts us at a disadvantage, because there are only so many grants and there are only so many people who donate to so many places. And, for example, when I visit my grandmother's house, she gets about 8 letters a day, and I'm not exaggerating, people asking for money, and it's not fair that People for People doesn't have the resources to communicate with the public at large like that.
And again, one of the reasons I'm here is try to find somebody that can help us write those grants, somebody that's willing to volunteer their time. I could use an electrical engineer for some advice too, on some things we did with our building and some things that will help us get through the health department inspection and those kinds of things. We find that the government, again, is trying to be helpful, but because of the laws, the rules, the order of our society, we have to meet the constraints and fall in line with everybody else, and we're trying to do that. But it's difficult when you're an all-volunteer organization. It's very, very difficult.
Like you mentioned before, you cut back on volunteers, but are you guys is People for People still accepting volunteers? If anyone out there listening is interested?
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. You can contact our director, Noreen Rand, R-A-N-D, Noreen. She's been our full-time director since 1984. Oh, wow. And our other part-time employees, her sister, Delia Barrett, both of whom are just such outstanding staff. But you can go in and contact either one of them and set up a schedule. And if you could come regularly on a regular day, a regular time, yes, it would help. Another thing that we've been able to do is an outreach program is provide community service. We're actually tied in through the courts. The judge sentences you to community service so people can come over and put their time in working at People for People. So we're offering that also and it's amazing to see people get involved and then come back after their community service is done and help out for a period of time. They disappear after a while, and you can't blame them. There's other commitments that they have to keep, but community service that helps keep us going too. But we're mostly looking for volunteers. Yes, of course.
That's great. Well, we're going to take a final break, but actually, before we do, I'd like to go back to the hobo camps, in the San Gabriel Valley, just as a little touch of history. And for those who don't know, hobo is not a derogatory term. It was kind of just a term that existed in the past dealing with people who were homeless or actually who traveled on American railroads. Am I right there?
There's a very distinct difference between a hobo and a tramp.
And what is that? I haven't heard the tramp, like Lady and the Tramp.
A hobo will work for food. They're trying to get by. It is simply a lifestyle that they've been forced into. The tramps, on the other hand, they're basically one step ahead of the law, as I understand it. They are a little bit of a shyster. They'll do what they have to survive, but they're in a survival mode, and they are not as altruistic as the hobos. The hobos were actually a underclass society within themselves. They were born out of the Depression because people just didn't have a house or whatever, and so they organized themselves in public areas or maybe private areas that they were allowed to use, and they had a whole network across the country. They would go migrate from place to place.
Oh, interesting.
Correct, Larry?
Yes. It's very interesting. Because of everything like society, we've become very security conscious. Things have changed. People that have and have not, and those that have not sometimes want from those that have. And we've had to close up the railroad cars, and the railroad had to add additional security. But there was a time when they were able to leave the boxcars open, and that was a form of transportation. They could move from area to area. And there's quite an extensive railroad system that people have forgotten about that goes throughout California.
That's so amazing, And there's a lot of classic kind of Americana characters, right, of Hobo Joe or Hobo Jack or whatever that people can Google or Wikipedia. But what I'm curious is, in terms of our local show, where were the hobo camps here? Because I think you mentioned one in El Monte, and you mentioned one maybe Pasadena area? Arcadia.
Yeah, there was a huge encampment. I believe it's called Hicks Camp in El Monte. And
was Hicks Camp a hobo camp, or was that for the migratory farm workers?
Well, it started off as a hobo camp and became migratory because the farm workers moved around, and then they started it. And they lasted probably into the 60s or 70s.
And there are some great Hicks Camp photos if you go to a park, Rio Vista Park in El Monte. There's some plaques there and some photos and the history of Hicks Camp. But it doesn't get into the hobo, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
What about the one in Arcadia?
Well, the one in Arcadia was far, far smaller than Hicks Camp and was literally a hobo village with little lean-tos, tents, whatever. They had about a dozen of them any time I was up there. And it was located where the 210 freeway is today, just up north of Baldwin, the stub end of Baldwin Avenue, more over towards the railway track. It was about maybe half mile from where I lived. And we'd go over there, and so I got to even know some of the people there. And I did a little thing of my own. I took a hobo trip when I was 18 years old, and not quite on the boxcars, but my father worked for the Santa Fe Railway. I took his railway pass, and I spent 3 weeks riding the rails of the mixed freights and whatever, based upon my acquaintance with the hobos and knowing where their places were. And I went all over the Midwest and the western United States, got down into Texas, and basically took off for 3 weeks.
It's a sad commentary now in our community, but there's a similar camp that exists today behind the Whittier Narrows Golf Course on the Rio Hondo River. There's an encampment of homeless people that live in tents and live out there. And what it was kind of amazing to me is that because they're people just like we are, they still love their pets. And they actually have pets that they support, their dogs, and they have a kennel for their dogs and tents for themselves. And so you can still find encampments like that throughout the San Gabriel Valley. People are still living under the tunnels and things.
I don't know if you are aware of the Vet Hunters organization based in South El Monte. We had them here on the program a couple of weeks ago. They're the ones that did the stand down in South El Monte with over 1,000 homeless veterans just this last weekend. But they actually go out and make friends of these people at Whittier Narrows and in the encampments, get to know them, and then those who are what I call disenfranchised veterans, ones that have been alienated from society and can't navigate all the bureaucratic paperwork of the Veterans Affairs Department and social agencies, they try to bring them back into the system and get them the services that they need. And Vet Hunters has been doing a great job with that. They've done this now for over 1,100 people in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm finding now, as I work more and more with Vet Hunters, Sean, that Vet Hunters is just one small portion of an entire network of veterans organizations affiliated with the VFW, American Legion, whatever, that is throughout Southern California. I'm getting about 8 emails a day.
Wow.
Now that I'm tied into their network of various aspects of it.
Yeah, let's get into that in our next segment. There may be things that have happened recently in the San Gabriel Valley. The Vet Hunter is always a good tie to People for People because there are so many resources for veterans, for people who need help in general. But a lot of times tying that need to the resource or connecting the dots is the biggest challenge. I'm sure People for People experiences that as well as you deal with, like you mentioned, a regional LA food outlets and different city governments and things of that nature. Let's take a break. We will be right back with our fourth segment. We'll talk about interesting events that have happened in the San Gabriel Valley, and we'll be back on Around the Valley.
Chris, can you put the video game controller down for a second?
I can talk and play. Oh, I'm totally annihilating this punk kid in Nebraska.
I just feel like you're not acting like a grown-up in our relationship.
Am too.
Well, you still ride your skateboard to work, there's the comic book collection, the race car bed.
Look, I'm young at heart, but I put money into my 401k every paycheck. I picked up a few savings tips at feedthepig.org. I have control of my financial life now, and that feels pretty grown up.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. Putting some money from every paycheck into a savings account or contributing to your 401k can make a big difference later. For free ideas and easy tips on ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
So, I bet I look like a grown-up to you now.
Well, except for the footy pajamas, I'd have to agree.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the California Society of CPAs, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Around the Valley. Today is November 6th, and I'm Lucia Flores here with Sean Tellis and Art Andy. Our special guest for today is Larry Brakebush from the People for People organization, and he's here to give us a little information about history of the People for People, and I hear you have an interesting story to tell us.
Well, yeah, to me it's interesting. I spent 35 years working in the field of law enforcement. So I saw society from one side. I saw a lot of the bad of society. And one of the things that really has opened my eyes is working with the volunteers, the people that came in to give of their time. There was one particular gentleman who's since passed away by the name of Jack. Jack had been a heroin addict, and Jack had done everything that you can think of conceivably that a heroin addict would have done. And yet Jack had turned around, he'd become a Christian, he turned his life over, and he became a volunteer. And where I was on the side where I was enforcing the drug laws, I was learning more about drugs and how it impacted society and people from Jack. And it gave me a human perspective that I had never considered before. And the fact that a fellow drug addict could turn around and turn his life around and want to give back to society showed me so much of heart of people, of the giving nature of people. And it kind of gave me a better understanding of how to enforce the law and maybe compassion for people and ways to consider why people get where they get. Sometimes it's not always something they want to do or have to do, but sometimes it's just the way society falls. But it was an interesting time in my life to spend time with Jack, and I really miss him. He's been dead a number of years now, but he was a great, great influence in showing me the different sides of life.
I think that's a wonderful example of the kind of things that happen when you volunteer for an organization or work for an organization like People for People. You get so many different perspectives on people, and I mean, even your name just says it. People for People. It's we're all the same, and I know you've mentioned it a few times that homeless people are just like us. People who need assistance sometimes with food, they're not always homeless. They're just people,
They're just people.
And I do a little bit of volunteer work for an organization called LA CADA, which is LA Center for Alcohol and Drug Abuse. And it's the same kind of thing. You read these stories of people that have transformed their lives completely. And it's not always black and white, and it's not always kind of a happy ending, but there's the whole spectrum of humanity that sometimes we forget about in our day-to-day lives.
Before I leave today, I have to give an awful lot of credit to, we're talking to me, but this is not about me. This is about the people that are involved. And I have a very, very strong board of directors that I work with and assist with the decisions that we make. And again, I have to give credit to the staff of Noreen Rand and Delia Barrett And Noreen's husband, Tom, they're the people that they do the nuts and bolts. They get down to the street level and do the things, pick up the food or arrange for food to be picked up and do these different things. It's when you have hardworking people, a good staff like that, it's really easy to be supportive of them. But it's also very frustrating because you see the ups and downs they go through and the trials and tribulations, not only of the business portion, but of their own personal lives. So if we could find a way today to get someone involved in and again, the grant writing program or know that there was going to be X amount of dollars coming in every month that we could count on, it would certainly make life easier for us as a nonprofit charity.
You know, for those who don't know, all nonprofits have a board of directors, and a board of directors usually are people who are, it's, you know, like a second job for them, or, you know, they have all the responsibilities of if something happens legally, they're responsible for the organization, and at the same time, they're pretty much doing it as a volunteer, taking on a leadership role or running an organization. That's kind of a correct summary of a board of directors, right?
Correct. Yeah. And you become friends with these people, and it's amazing how they all care. But we're always looking for new people too. I mean, we're looking for board members, new fresh ideas, people that are willing to get involved from the community. Like you're involved, and Lucia, you're involved in different things. That makes a difference. So we're always looking for new people that are very interested. So
I've always thought that's one of the reasons why Rosemead City is run so well, is the council is pretty diverse in terms of ethnicity, in terms of age, and you know, I think a proper board is that way because, like you said, you all have different ideas and bring in kind of a different, style.
You've heard me again give credit to that city because I love the diversity of it, and I love the way that they stay proactive. And I think it's being proactive that makes a difference instead of reactive. As Art has mentioned, some cities think about themselves and then become reactive to their own city, and they don't look outside the city boundaries. But I'll tell you what, even though we feed over 50% of the people we feed come from the city of Rosemead, we still feed a good percentage from the city of San Gabriel. And I'm really disappointed that San Gabriel has not gotten more involved. But again, through the service clubs, that is refreshing and that helps, and those are positive things. So we have to look at positive things today.
Exactly. And I do believe there is kind of like a renaissance of community either happening or about to happen. You know, I hear a lot of rumblings and people that I know talking about a want for that and a need for that. And I think you see it in events like Rosemead. When you have a 4th of July parade or whatever you have, you bring everyone together, you give all the nonprofits a booth, you let people see what exists out there for them. And I think San Gabriel, they did do that for the 4th of July, and I think that was great, but I think it's very limited what they're doing. And again, not to badmouth one city or another, but just to say that some cities are responding to this need for community in a positive way, you know, parks, bikes, just events to happen, you know, summer concerts. We were a big proponent of the summer concerts because no matter what language, you can come and listen to music. And I think Temple City has really been at the forefront of that and done a great job. And other cities have followed, like El Monte, South El Monte. But let's change topic.
Rosemead has its concert too.
Let's not forget Rosemead.
San Gabriel doesn't.
San Gabriel does not. I wasn't going to bring it up, but San Gabriel is the only city around that does not have summer concerts for some odd reason. But let's talk a little bit about just things that have been happening. I know, Art, you went to the stand down. I was there for the opening ceremonies. You were there after me. How did that event go?
Well, as far as I know, it went very, very successfully. I did not, of course, attend it on Saturday or Sunday. I was just there for part of it on Friday. But they had excellent coverage from the news media. Channel 2 and Channel 9 were there. They had other TV channels as well, broadcasting directly up to their receivers on Mount Wilson. They had about at least 30 different organizations, maybe more. The National Alliance for Mental Illness was there. The Veterans Administration had entire buses of equipment and displays and whatever that were there that people could go inside. The local armory had erected tents with the reservists tending those for all those people. About an estimated 1,000 were there. And overall, it should have been a very, very successful event. I talked with Melanie last night, and she seemed to be very happy with it. They're looking forward to next year.
Melanie from the Vet Hunters.
Right, Melanie from the Real, though I was a guest here on the program.
Yeah, exactly. And I had the same kind of feel when I was there. I was there earlier. I got to hear the politicians speak. But more importantly, I got to meet some of the families. 2 of the camps at that stand down were named after local veterans who had passed away. You know how camps in the military are always named after someone or something. So they were named after 2 veterans who passed away. And it was really hard to see. I was sitting behind the 2 families that were related to the person who was killed. And, you know, to see the pain that they're going through and that they're still suffering with was really hard, but I think it's really important as well. You know, to acknowledge that that's happening and to experience that. And more important, and not more importantly, and in addition to that, be servicing all the veterans who were there. You know, a lot of the local groups, like you mentioned, came. I know, I think I wrote it, Mid-Valley News has an article coming out tomorrow in the paper about it, but, you know, local groups came to donate haircuts and manicures, and, you know, other people were giving away clothes, and some local groups, I think a Pasadena Health group had come to give free dentistry service, and, you know, things like that are just.
By the way, People for People did contribute food for the lunch on Sunday as well. They had some bread and other products that they.
That's
Think
great.
think about the service that the military people have given us. They've given the country. They sacrifice time out of their lives for us, and they do so voluntarily. We don't have the draft anymore. We're not conscripting people. We're letting people come and help us. And what a gift! What a true gift that they give to us. And it's nice to see that we're reacting to them, but what a pity that we have to do that we're talking about homeless veterans, that we're talking about homeless people, we're talking about children, 1 in 6 going hungry. We're talking about 47 million people in this country being on food stamps. That's a sad time. It's a sad commentary. We're the richest country in the world. And people are willing to share it if we can just get to the right ear. For instance, we talked about different organizations. I have to give an awful lot of credit to the Rosemead Walmart. I know that we're quite controversial. I stayed out of the controversy when they came. They're an established store in the community now, and the management of that store has been so supportive of People for People and the things that we do. And we have to give organizations like that, Bank of America, the Wells Fargo branch over in Rosemead has been supportive. There are businesses that really do want to help. There are people that care out there, and we just need to get the word out to them that we're in need.
Yeah, completely agree with that. In my experience running around for the newspaper. Lucia, I heard you went to a menudo breakfast?
Oh, yes, it was the Centennial Breakfast. Some of you might know that this year El Monte is celebrating their 100th year. So they've been having different centennial events. I know a few weeks ago they had a Memories of El Monte thing at the Tony Arceo Park. They've also had different events. But this past Sunday, they had the Menudo Breakfast, which was presented by the La Historia Historical Society. And they actually helped open, in 2001, they helped establish and open a museum, which is the La Historia Museum located on Tyler Avenue here in El Monte. And it's so awesome because you see in that little museum, they have photos documenting the 9 barrios of El Monte from the past. And you can see photos of Hicks camps and Granada and the different barrios that they had. But it was really nice. They had a menudo breakfast. Along with the menudo, they had pan dulce, which is always good, you know, and coffee. So it was a nice event. And it's a good thing because we're talking about community and, you know, just when I went there, I felt that community. You see people that have known each other for years, since the 30s, since the 40s. And we talked to the president, Charles Zapata, and he said it's interesting because you go down the line, and he had said you hear these conversations about, you know, going back years, and it's so nice. It's like a reunion feel type thing. So it was a really nice thing that they were doing there.
That sounds great. If you've never been to the La Historia Museum, you need to check it out. El Monte has 2 historical museums, one next to the other, and La Historia doesn't seem to be open as much as I'd like, but it's worth the time to get in there. Art, you wanted to say something?
Just wanted to mention that we have an activity coming up this coming Monday, which is the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast at Rosemead. I kind of hesitate to invite people to call in for tickets because at last count, we had less than 10 of them left, and by the time this broadcast airs, they may be gone. But we are apparently going to have a packed house. We're going to be having Jimmy Weldon with his patriotic presentation. We're going to have a montage of veterans and also city people from Rosemead going in a PowerPoint in the background. We have several of the local churches participating. So it should be a very, very nice morning and honoring and celebrating our veterans and also hopefully reuniting the spiritual community. This is a revival of a activity that used to be in Rosemead. It's been away for about 15 years, and we're already being asked by some of the participating churches, hey, we're going to do this next year? So I'm glad to see the enthusiasm.
I think that's great. I'm glad that the event you're planning is successful because you invest a lot in a lot of different things.
I'm not planning this. This is the Spiritual Values Committee of the Kiwanis Club. I'm just publicizing it.
Well, I'm glad the event you're publicizing through the Spiritual Values Committee of Kiwanis is successful. But, one of the things I'd like to learn about in general is just these prayer breakfasts, because I remember a few years ago, Arcadia, there was kind of a controversy because for whatever reason, there was a controversy around a prayer breakfast in Arcadia. And I had never heard of prayer breakfasts before. And I guess that's a tradition kind of in the cities to once a year have a prayer breakfast. And it actually plays over to a question I have about service clubs. I know all service clubs, or at least the meetings I seem to have attended, kind of have a prayer at the beginning, but they call it an invocation. Same with City Hall, actually. When I go to the city council meetings, it's the same kind of thing. It's an invocation, but it's a prayer. And so I wonder, because to me, growing up not having public prayer, it kind of seems different. But I know for a lot of people growing up with public prayer, it's actually quite common.
Well, it is very, very common. And when service clubs were first getting started, the religious component of the service clubs was so strong that, believe it or not, in the early 1920s, the Catholic Church, because they were afraid of the anti-Catholic movements here in this country, the Ku Klux Klan and whatever, they actually told their people not to join the service clubs for a while because they were not sure where these movements were going. They had such a religious component to them. Then eventually they backed off and found out, hey, this is really something that, anybody, any Christian can be a part of. It's not another anti-Catholic organization, and they backed off. But the service clubs were originally seen by their own members as a means of going beyond just the business to development, mutual sharing of business with one another, which had started out that way in the early part of the 1900s, to go into the community, because most of these people were Christians, and some Jews, I presume, at the same time, but they saw that as an extension of their religious commitment. When I say the Christians need to get out and do this, it's not a slam at anybody who happens to be a Buddhist or Hindu or something else. I'm sure they feel the same way. But it is part of our teaching that we're supposed to be concerned about the poor and the needy and the fatherless and the widow. And to implement that, we have to do things in the community as Christians. And I would certainly welcome any other denomination as well. In fact, we do have help from the University of the West in Rosemead, which happens to be the largest Buddhist liberal arts college in the entire United States, headquartered in Rosemead.
Very interesting place. I've been to lecture to there. I like that place. But in terms of prayer at a city council meeting, for example, we don't have prayers at city council meetings, but we have invocations, right? Which are more or less.
Let me make a comment on that. You got to remember how this country was started. You go back to 1600. It was started because of religious freedom. Yeah. This country was based upon Christian values. Everything that we have in our government, if you look back at a reference, for instance, the House of Representatives was used as a church for over 1,000 years. Did you know that?
100 years, not 1,000.
No, excuse me, over 100 years, yes.
We're not that old as a country, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Keep in mind, the House of Representatives was a church. All the laws in this country were based upon Christian values. And so when you talk about prayer was a very, very important part of this country. When it goes back, we've gotten away from that because we're trying to be politically correct, and without getting involved in the politics, even though this is election day, we want to talk about the fact that we do have Christian values in this country. Values that we care about other people. We operate the freedom to allow many different, diverse people to be here. That's what made our country so great. Yeah. And the diversity is still good, but there's a fear now. There's a fear of the unknown. In the old days, as the population changed, the diversity of the people tried to assimilate into our country. The fear now is that some societies are not as easily assimilated. And as we assimilate people more, and the fears go about, that's why we were talking about partner sharing with different organizations and Asian groups, for instance. That will help break down these barriers and make things a much better place for this country.
Assimilation normally takes about 2 generations, but it's already occurring with the Asia Pacific population. If you talk to the kids that we have in our key club at Rosemead High School, 90% of that club is Asia Pacific in its backgrounds, and you'd be willing to put those kids down alongside anybody that I grew up with. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin or what their national origins were. It has to do with their heart and the attitude in their minds. And believe me, these kids are as service-oriented as anybody that I've ever known. What they're doing in this area, we had 150 of them, according to their October report, that did at least 5 hours of service in the community last month.
Some of that service has gone to us because those kids have come over and done community service at People for People, and we'll see more of that as we get close to Christmas time now.
We actually get a detailed report that they send into their district conference. I know how many kids helped each organization, and you're right, Familia Unida, People for People, and about 15 other organizations were beneficiaries. The big one, amazingly, that over half of them participated in was the AIDS Walk, which wasn't even a Rosemead activity. It was in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's for October.
No, I think it's fascinating. I mean, topics like religion and stuff, a lot of times we don't like to talk about them, but I think they're important to talk about because they exist, and we have people with different and diversity in our area. It's a very hot topic right now, as we have some of the fastest changing populations in Southern California. And also, like, for example, La Historia, a lot of times certain perspectives don't get told, or at least in the mainstream or remembered. Maybe they're told, but they're not remembered. And I think, for example, the Chinese exclusion laws that happened in the 1800s, some people don't know about them, but what I think is most interesting about them, beyond their offensive laws, but what's so interesting about them is we had so many Chinese and Chinese Americans in California and surrounding areas at the time that we made federal laws about it, and so I think a lot of times people think it's a new issue, and maybe it is because every day is new, but there's constantly these struggles of culture. I know I've been working on my family tree a lot with my grandmother, actually, and we have a lot of German things going on there. And it's interesting when you look at the history of German immigration in America. And yeah, we can say they've assimilated now because we've kind of forgotten who's German. But at the same time, for those first few generations, you read the same thing that everyone was saying about people now. These people don't want to assimilate. These people have their own culture, their own language. They're sending all their money home. And, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, I know better and this and that. But it's just interesting to learn about these things that a lot of people, that we've forgotten about, that
the labor force that built the railroad, which was the main way that things were moved throughout this country, were done by the Chinese laborers in this state.
Yeah, and some people don't know. We went there to pick them up. Yes. We liked their work so much, we drove over there and brought them back in boats.
Well, part of the reason, I believe, was that they actually had the skills to do it, whereas the people from other countries did not, because of the things they were already doing in China. They were used to doing things like the Great Wall and whatever. The idea of a team outbuilding something was something that was intrinsic within their culture, and they adapted to the skills of railroad building very readily. Whereas you brought in people from a farm, they weren't ready to make that transition.
A great work ethic, too. They worked very hard.
Oh, yeah. And I think something that maybe brings all our conversation together, if that's even possible, with everything we've come across, is the thing that ties us all together are community events. Community opportunities like People for People or like Kiwanis or like Rotary, where you can get together and talk to people you might not normally have talked to and experience things like you mentioned earlier, emotional experiences or getting a different perspective on humanity. And that only happens if you meet somebody outside of your social circle. And that happens when you have events or opportunities to volunteer or become a part of like People for People. And so, thank you for your work. I think I'd like to give you an opportunity to mention anything else you'd like to mention about People for People, or maybe just remind people how to get involved or what you need.
Well, just like Lucia said, there is an opportunity for volunteers. We're always looking for volunteers. We're looking for help. We're looking for contributions. We're looking for substantial amounts of ideas, new ideas, fresh ideas, people willing to take time to meet the needs. And I know that they're out there. It's just a matter of communicating to them. So I want to thank you so very much for this opportunity to come on and be able to talk about this and to share what we have. And I really appreciate your support and the interest. And again, we're located at 1311 Las Tunas, just inside the city of San Gabriel. We're at the rear of 1309. Our director is Noreen Rand, and she can be reached at 626-285-2549. If you have any questions, please feel free to give her a call, and she'll answer any question that she can. And again, thank you all for the participation today.
Oh, thank you. Art, did you have any closing remarks?
Just that I am thankful that Mr. Brakebush was able to come here today. I'm certainly a supporter, as he has pointed out, by outing my wife's relationship with the organization of People for People and of the entire food bank and the concept of helping with the social net here in this area. And for anybody who would like to have more information about Rosemead Kiwanis, rosemeadkiwanis.org on the internet. And if you'd like to be getting our newsletter, please feel free to drop a note to us at kcrosemead@aol.com. We'll add you to our mailing list.
And I'd like to thank Mr. Brakebush for coming in, because I never knew about People for People. I just learned about it today, and it's a really good thing what you guys do, and it's so great to hear that you care so much for the community and you want the community to be involved, because that's how we all help each other. And so it's a really nice thing to learn about. And if anyone wants to learn more about Baldwin Park or adult education, you can always Google online. You can go to baldwinpark.com and you can get more information on events in Baldwin Park. And for El Monte, you can go to the city website also, and there are a few events coming up. And yeah, if you enjoy listening to Around the Valley, you can listen to more of our programming here on Mid Valley Radio.
Nice. And don't forget to plug your rock en español.
Oh yes, and rock. If you like to listen to Spanish rock in español, you can listen to my show Rock and Rolas Wednesday and Saturday nights at 8:00 on midvalleyradio.net.
That's great. Well, thank you, Art and Lucia, and thank you, Mr. Brakebush. That was great to have you and learn. Like Lucia, I learned a lot today about People for People. I'd heard of it this past year for the first time, just working with the paper, and actually through San Gabriel Rotary is the first time I heard People for People. And it's amazing the kind of work people do every day that we just don't hear about, and the kind of amazing things that I know have been happening that I know that I don't know are happening. And it's great to have an opportunity with someone like you that you can just kind of lay it out of what's been going on, the history of it, and some specific examples and how to get involved. Because I am a big believer in people do care about each other, like we all know, actually, like the reason we're all sitting here. And it's just they need a vehicle sometimes to be able to use that. And I think you guys are the perfect vehicle for that. And I wish you a lot of success in fundraising, and hopefully we can help you with that, and for sure be involved with the newspaper. And we will continue that conversation in the future. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to us around the valley. Today again is November 6, 2012, and we will see you next week.